Are RWU students who plan to vote by mail more likely to vote for Joe Biden? By Kiesow, Kyle McCormack, and Kyle Stuart. Before the 2020 election, Trump was discouraging mail-in voting, and the month leading up to it, he discouraged it over 81 times. This begged the question on whether or not his rhetoric had an effect on mail-in voters choosing Biden. Our objective and hypothesis. We wanted to determine if RWU students who plan to vote by mail are more likely to vote for Biden than Trump. We want to see the effects that the president and Republican Party's rhetoric on mail-in voting has on our student population. So our hypothesis is that students who plan to vote for Biden are more likely to vote by mail than those who plan to vote for Trump.
In order to answer this question, we created a survey and sent it to as many students as we could. And we asked them their political affiliation to vote for, if they were going to vote in mail or by mail or in person, and if they were going to, whether they were doing it because of convenience or concerns about COVID. We then ran the regression seen on the screen to figure out the correlation between voting by mail and voting for Biden, as well as the strength of that correlation. You can change the slide. There we go. Next, we ran a hypothesis statistically significant. So if the t-stat ended up being greater than 1.96, the relationship would be statistically significant at the 5% level. If it was greater than 2.58, it would be statistically significant at the 1% level. So hopefully we're going to be able to reject the null hypothesis, which would confirm that our results were statistically significant. You can change the slide, yeah. And the results were that mail-in voters at Roger Williams were 23% more likely to vote for Biden than Trump. And the t-statistic for our regression was 2.59, which means that the relationship is statistically significant at the 1% level. It's also important to remember that those results are separate than just to vote for. There are a lot more people planning to vote for Biden than Trump, but if you take that out of the regression, or if you incorporate that into the regression rather, it's still much more likely that you would vote for Biden if you were planning to vote by mail.
All right, now we have the real world comparisons. The precinct was normally located at RWU, but this year the precinct was moved to Wood Street due to COVID reasons, and therefore would not reflect the population that we were targeting. Regardless, major news sources reported that Biden dominated Trump in mail-in voters. So now we have error and limitations. Our sample size was only 50 individuals, which was a small sample size. We plan to account for the reason for which mail-in voters plan to vote by mail, but the data was not usable due to the small sample size and the lack of variation in responses. And our findings cannot be compared to the greater population because Roger Williams students are a very specific demographic. We're all 17 to 23-year-olds, mostly white, Democrat, and mostly New Englanders. And our potential error terms such as gender, age, race, and etc. may have reduced our error terms, but would have made our survey too invasive. And here are our sources.
Now, how do I stop recording? There we go.